A 15-year-old American in 1915 could spend an entire week in the wilderness carrying only a small pack, an axe, a knife, and a few simple tools while comfortably building shelter, finding water, cooking meals, and staying warm. Today, many adults struggle to spend one night outside without modern equipment. These weren't hobbies, they were everyday survival skills passed from parents and grandparents. In this countdown of 30 forgotten abilities, several have nearly vanished, and a few survive only among a handful of traditional outdoorsmen and historical educators. Stay until number 1, the single skill that made every other camping skill on this list possible. We begin at number 22. Number 22, building debris shelters once marked the difference between comfort and hardship for young campers growing up in rural America. Before factory tents lined hardware store shelves, shelter was a matter of knowledge and resourcefulness, not a matter of what you could buy. Early youth manuals, like the 1911 Boy Scout Handbook and Daniel Carter Beard's American Boy's Handybook, devoted entire chapters to lean-tos and debris huts, structures made entirely from branches, leaves, and forest litter. Youngsters learned to choose a dry, sheltered spot away from pooling water, lay a sturdy frame of sticks, and pile on layers of leaves or pine needles thick enough to keep out the cold. The skill wasn't just about staying dry, it was about reading the land, understanding insulation, and trusting that the woods themselves could provide a night's rest. In the age of the Civilian Conservation Corps, even teenagers in work camps built these shelters as a daily routine. Today, the knowledge has faded from most family camping trips, replaced by nylon tents and synthetic tarps. Yet, the ability to turn the forest floor into a safe haven, armed with nothing more than an axe, a knife, and a practiced eye, was once a rite of passage. It stands as one of the most forgotten, yet foundational, skills of early American camping. The lesson endures. True shelter depends on skill, not gear. Number 15. Building a camp crane once stood as a mark of true campsite ingenuity. With nothing but a green sapling, a sturdy stick, and a pocket knife, young campers could rig a hinged arm that swung a kettle or pot over the fire, raising, lowering, or swinging it aside with a single motion. Daniel Carter Beard's 1882 The American Boy's Handybook laid out the design. A forked upright driven into the ground, a pivoting crossarm notched to hold the pot, and a counterweight or peg to keep everything steady. Later scout manuals kept the tradition alive, preserving the image of a simple wooden crane as the heart of a makeshift camp kitchen. The beauty of the camp crane lies in its dual purpose. It's both a lesson in woodcraft and a solution for safe, efficient cooking, all without a scrap of metal or a store-bought gadget. For generations, this was the kind of knowledge passed from older siblings or scoutmasters to the next in line, an ordinary part of setting up camp, as familiar as gathering firewood or rolling out a blanket. In an era before folding grill racks and titanium tripods, the camp crane was a fireside fixture, blending resourcefulness with a touch of frontier engineering. Today, the skill has faded into obscurity, but its legacy remains, a reminder that a single sapling, shaped by practiced hands, could transform a campfire into a working kitchen. Number 14. Sleeping warm without modern gear was a nightly test of skill for young campers before the age of synthetic sleeping bags and insulated pads. In the Missouri Ozarks of the 1880s, Horace Kephart learned to make a cold night bearable with nothing but a wool blanket and what the forest provided. Evergreen boughs, carefully layered on the ground, formed the mattress, lifting the sleeper above the cold earth and trapping pockets of air for insulation. Wool blankets, prized for their warmth even when damp, were wrapped tightly, sometimes doubled for extra protection. Staying warm depended less on what you brought and more on how you used it, choosing the right site, building up a thick bed of pine, and layering clothing under and over the blanket. After moving to North Carolina in 1904, Kephart distilled these lessons into his classic Camping and Woodcraft, where he famously wrote, though not in so many words, that a true woodsman with an axe, a knife, and a blanket could find comfort anywhere. The phrase is often quoted but remains unverified in his published works. The spirit, however, is woven through every chapter. For generations, warmth at night was a matter of knowledge, not equipment, a quiet confidence that the skills you carried mattered more than what you owned. Number 13, predicting weather from nature once ranked among the most valued skills a young camper could possess. Long before radios or smartphone alerts, teenagers learned to read the sky and sense the wind, making camp decisions that often meant the difference between a dry night and a miserable one. Early scout manuals and woodcraft handbooks treated weather reading as practical knowledge, not a mystery reserved for adults. In the open country of the Great Plains, the sudden rise of thunderheads and the shifting direction of the wind signaled an approaching storm, while in the mountains, the formation of lenticular clouds or a sharp drop in temperature warned of incoming cold. These lessons were passed down by elders who had learned to trust subtle changes in the air, the movement of birds, or the way smoke drifted through the trees. The ability to predict weather was so fundamental that it shaped the rhythm of camp life, whether to gather firewood early, reinforce a shelter, or move to higher ground. Today, the relevance of this skill remains clear in places like Alaska, where bush pilots still rely on traditional cues to navigate unpredictable skies when instruments fail. Unlike navigation, which tells you where you are, weather sense prepares you for what is coming, turning observation into foresight. For generations, this knowledge was a quiet form of power, one that kept families safe and dry, and that now stands as a top preservation priority for anyone hoping to reclaim the lost art of living well outdoors. Number 10. Building a smokeless cooking fire once marked a turning point in a young camper's journey from uncertainty to real self-reliance. In civilian Conservation Corps camps of the 1930s, boys from cities like Brooklyn arrived with little experience and plenty of nerves. The challenge wasn't just to get a fire going, it was to control it, to coax heat from damp wood and wet leaves without billowing smoke that choked the cook and gave away the camp. The task required patience, dry kindling found under logs, careful stacking, and a steady hand at feeding fuel. CCC records recall how fire-building drills became a daily lesson, transforming awkward teenagers into skilled woodsmen. While the story of Robert L. Johnson's diary from Shoshone National Forest remains unverified, the pattern is clear in countless accounts. The pride that came from finally producing a hot, nearly invisible flame, even when the weather worked against you. For generations, mastering the smokeless fire turned anxiety into confidence and made the difference between a meal cooked well and a night spent coughing over smoke. Today, most campers rely on stoves or fire starters, missing the quiet triumph that came from making a clean, controlled fire with nothing but local wood and practiced hands. Number 9. Splitting kindling was the quiet backbone of camp life in the Adirondacks and beyond. Before a single match was struck, boys stood beside their fathers or older brothers at dawn, learning how to turn stout branches and fallen limbs into tidy stacks of dry, splintered fuel. In hunting camps tucked deep in the northern woods, this wasn't just busy work. It was a daily test of judgment and care. The right kindling meant the difference between a stubborn, smoky fire and a clean, quick blaze that warmed the tent and cooked the morning meal. Guides taught newcomers to choose straight-grained wood, notch it with a hatchet, and split it against a stump or flat stone, always watching for hidden knots that could twist the blade. The ritual of kindling splitting was more than preparation. It was the first lesson in making nature work for you, a craft passed down in the hush of early morning, long before the world woke up. In an era when every fire counted, this simple act bridged the gap between raw wood and the promise of warmth, turning a chore into a mark of real competence. Number 8, making natural cordage stands as one of the most quietly powerful skills in the old American camping tradition. Before the age of nylon rope and paracord, young campers learned to manufacture their own cordage from the very landscape around them, turning raw plant fibers into the backbone of camp life. The birch bark roll, a handbook cherished by generations of woodcraft Indians, preserves step-by-step diagrams for twisting bark twine, most famously using the inner bark of the basswood tree in the woodlands of the Northeast. The process was methodical, harvesting the bark in spring when it peeled most easily, soaking it to soften the fibers, then splitting and twisting them into a 3-strand rope strong enough for shelter frames, fishing lines, or pack straps. This ability wasn't just about thrift, it was about independence. Daniel Boone's frontier legacy included making rope from birch and basswood, a practice that echoed through the camps of early Boy Scouts and rural families alike. What set this skill apart was its place at the very foundation of outdoor competence. Before you could build, hang, or secure anything, you had to create the tool itself. In a world where every knot, every lashing, and every repair depended on cordage, mastering this process turned the forest into a living hardware store. Today, the art of making rope from the land has nearly vanished, replaced by hardware store twine and factory-made gear. Yet, for those who remember, the memory of twisting bark into rope by hand is a quiet reminder of a time when self-reliance began not with what you packed, but with what you could make from the world around you. Number 5, digging a camp latrine was never a glamorous task, but it stood at the heart of real backcountry living. In the days before trail toilets and chemical bags, sanitation was a matter of discipline and shared duty. The 1910 USDA Forest Service guidelines left no room for improvisation. Campers were instructed to dig pit latrines at least 200 steps from any water source, 6 to 8 inches deep, and to bury all waste thoroughly. These rules weren't just about comfort, they protected streams from contamination and kept sickness at bay, especially in crowded logging camps or scout outings where dozens might share a single site for weeks. Every morning, young campers learned to treat sanitation as part of camp order, not an afterthought. The simple act of digging and covering a latrine became a lesson in responsibility, health, and respect for the land. While modern campers may take trailhead restrooms for granted, earlier generations knew that a well-sited latrine could mean the difference between a safe, healthy camp and a miserable, disease-ridden stay in the woods. Number 4, leaving no useful material behind was more than a camp rule. It was a way of thinking that shaped every trip into the woods. Thrift and resourcefulness guided every decision, from packing gear to breaking camp. In families shaped by the Depression and the lean years before it, nothing with life left in it was wasted. A worn-out blanket might become a ground sheet, an empty flour sack could serve as a food bag, and a bit of baling wire might be twisted into a pothook. The story of Emma Grandma Gatewood, who in 1955 hiked the entire Appalachian Trail with just an army blanket and a plastic shower curtain, stands as a living echo of this ethic. Her choices weren't just about saving weight. They reflected a tradition where durability and ingenuity mattered more than shiny new equipment. For earlier generations, the real skill was knowing what could be repurposed, what deserved to be carried forward, and how to stretch every scrap to its limit. This habit of careful judgment joined economy and endurance, tying together hardship, comfort, and a quiet pride in making do. Today, as gear piles up in garages and disposable culture thrives, the old camp thrift is nearly forgotten. A powerful reminder that the greatest tool was always a practiced mind. In second place, building a complete camp before sunset was more than a matter of routine. It was a principle that shaped every successful night in the woods. For generations, young campers learned that the hour before dusk was the most precious of all. The Boy Scout Handbook of 1911 laid out the sequence. Choose a dry, level site, clear it of brush, set up the tent or shelter, gather firewood, and prepare bedding, always before the sun slipped behind the trees. This discipline protected against the sudden drop in temperature, the confusion of darkness, and the fatigue that set in after a long day's travel. It was not just about efficiency, it was about readiness. With the camp built, firewood stacked, and bedding arranged, families and crews could relax, eat, and sleep in safety, no matter how rough the weather turned. The habit of working ahead, of beating the night, gave earlier generations the confidence to travel farther and stay out longer, relying on order and foresight rather than luck or last-minute scrambling. In a world before lanterns and headlamps, this simple sequence could mean the difference between comfort and calamity, a life-saving rhythm that modern camping rarely demands, but once defined what it meant to be truly prepared in the wild. And finally, in first place stands the core philosophy that shaped an entire era of American camping, the quiet assurance that comfort in the wild comes not from equipment, but from competence. For great-grandparents raised between the 1880s and the 1950s, the mark of readiness was being able to travel, sleep, and eat well outdoors, with nothing more than an axe, a knife, a blanket, a coil of rope, and a battered pot. Horace Kephart's preface to Camping and Woodcraft distilled this ethic, urging readers to master the basics. Wielding an axe, building fires, and making a camp with simple tools. This wasn't just a set of techniques, but a mindset passed down through family camps, logging crews, and youth organizations, where teenagers learned to rely on judgment and skill rather than a pile of store-bought gear. In 1915, a 15-year-old could spend a week in the woods with a bedroll and a sharp blade, while today's campers often depend on synthetic tents and specialty gadgets. The difference was never just in what you carried, but in what you knew. Every other skill on this list, shelter building, fire making, natural cordage, grew from this foundation of self-reliance. It's a tradition nearly lost, the quiet pride of making yourself at home in any landscape with only the essentials and a practiced hand. This is the heart of forgotten American woodcraft, and the legacy that once made the wilderness feel like a second home to generations of young adventurers. Across these 30 nearly vanished skills, one pattern endures. Self-reliance was once a birthright, not a specialty. What our great-grandparents saw as daily routine now feels extraordinary, proof that resilience is taught, not bought. Today, as comfort and gear replace know-how, we risk losing more than technique. We lose a mindset. These traditions remind us that independence was once the American way. Which skill would you bring back? Share your thoughts below.